Hi everyone, this video is on more basic setup information about how to hold the violin or viola. This video is intended to be watched after you watch my first video on how to hold the violin or viola, which I think is entitled to How to Hold a Violin or Viola, and it is part of a series that I made called Violin and Viola Basics for Children. This video is intended for children who've been playing maybe already for a few months or for adult beginners. So let's get into it. So the first step for making sure that we have really good technique in terms of just how we hold our instrument is making sure that our shoulders are down and they're not raised. So I'm going to raise my shoulders like this. That's kind of a common thing to do if you feel like you're afraid of dropping the instrument, is to go like this, but that's not how we want to play because it's going to make it hard to play, and it's also going to cause a lot of tension and potentially injuries, so we want to keep our shoulders nice and relaxed. So one way you can do that is just to practice raising your shoulders, lowering your shoulders, and then make that distinction between raising your arms and raising your shoulders. So you can see here how, here's my collarbone or my clavicle. When I raise my shoulders like this, I'm causing my clavicle to tilt up like that. So when I'm not raising my shoulders, it's kind of actually slopes down a little bit, or it's basically flat. And so when I do that, I'm also raising my shoulder blade, which is back here. So I don't want to lift up my shoulder blade like that. I'm going to keep it nice and relaxed. So another thing you can do to kind of help yourself learn the distinction between shoulders up versus shoulders down is you can practice doing kind of like what I call, various like bird wings. So I do with kids, I'll do chicken wings. So we do chicken wings because automatically when you do this, you're isolating motion from your shoulder. So these are all rotator cuff muscles. So we're not going like that. So we can do chicken wings, and that kind of helps us to not go like that. And then we can also do eagle wings, which then is kind of a next step of just being able to like raise our arms from our shoulders using all of our rotator cuff muscles instead of also elevating our clavicles and our shoulder blades. So that's kind of a first step. So next step is to learn the difference between pronation and supination, because those are different movements that we need when we play a string instrument. So here's what pronation is. You can remember it by, I'm going to pretend that I have something in my hand. Or maybe actually I'm going to start like this. And so let's say that I have a bowl of soup on top of my hand. And I'm going to pour the soup out. I'm going to go like that. That's pronation. And we can remember it as like pro sounds kind of like pour. So I'm going to pour the soup out. Okay, so then if I have supination, that's the opposite direction. That's what I do just to hold the soup. So I'm going to hold this bowl of soup in my hand. So that's supination. So with our left arm when we play, we supinate. So here's my violin or viola position. So one thing we can do to really develop a healthy ability to hold the instrument is this exercise. So I'm going to start with my palms up, so I'm supinating, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my left arm above my head. You can do this with both arms too if you want. So I'm going to do this with both arms for now. And now I'm going to, while keeping my palms facing up, so now they're going to be facing back, behind me. So now I'm going to make a circle with my arms, so palms up. And as I go back, I'm going to kind of feel how my shoulder blades are pressing together. I had a teacher once who said like it should feel like you're putting the back corner of your shoulder blade into your back pocket of your pants. So I'm going to press, kind of just feel how my shoulder blades just kind of go back and down as I rotate my arms back. So why we do this is because one, it kind of automatically sets our scapula, our shoulder blade back and down, but also look at how much further I can supinate if I rotate kind of all the way, this whole process of rotation includes my shoulder blade. So if I just try to go from my hand, I can't go very far. My thumb is pointing up. I can't even make my palm face up. So let's say I'm going to rotate now from my, not from my hand or wrist, but from my elbow. So I can go a little bit further, but my thumb is still kind of pointing up. I'm not going like that. So let's see what happens if I go from my shoulder. Okay, that's quite a bit further. But so you can see how now my palm's kind of flat. My pinky is somewhat pointing up. But let's see what if I do this exercise. So I'm going to start with palms up, raise my arms above my shoulders, and then make a circle. And now you can see how my pinky is pointing up. My fourth finger is pointing up towards the ceiling. So that's the position we want to be in to set up our left hand really well. So that's kind of a good first step of just how to relax our shoulders and how to set up our left hand. So the next thing I'm going to show you is just what it looks like when we put the violin up. So to do this, I want the button to come and touch my neck, and I don't want to move my head like that. So one thing I do with kids is I'll have them place an object. I have a bean bag, but it is not out at the moment. So I'm going to put this eraser on top of my head, and I'm going to see if I can bring the violin to me so that I'm not going like that and having, what is ever on my head fall off. So that's kind of a good first step, is we want to move the violin and not our head. We don't want to go like that. So another thing we need to know is that the bottom plate of the instrument is going to come and sit on our clavicle. So you can see how right now I don't have my shoulder rest on, and I'm doing that to illustrate just really how we want to have the instrument sit on our collarbone. So yeah, when I use a shoulder rest, it does kind of obscure that a little bit. I mean, it still is the same basic position, but it just makes it a little bit harder to see because then there's this additional space filled in here. So let's see what it looks like. So yeah, as I mentioned, this is going to come sit right here on my clavicle. Frequently with kids, I'll have them practice balancing the hacky sack or other object on their shoulder like that. So yeah, find your collarbone, and I'm going to put the eraser or whatever it is on my shoulder, kind of like that, so it's going to sit right there. That's where the violin sits. All right, so bottom plate sits on my clavicle. The button is going to touch my neck, so I don't want it away from my neck like this, because especially what that leads to is that, so then I'm moving my head, and that's going to cause all this tension in my neck. So let's see what it looks like if I do it correctly. So I'm going to pull my violin out, I'm going to turn it that way, so the scroll is pointing left, I'm going to point the strings up, and now I'm going to bring the violin so it's sitting on my clavicle, and the button is touching my neck, and my head didn't move. So let's see what the common mistakes are. So one common mistake is not having the instrument, the button, touch our neck. So if it's kind of out here, we go like that, and oh no, it fell down. So let's then see another mistake. So another problem is this part not sitting on our clavicle. So let's see what happens there is if it's kind of down too low. That's another thing that kids frequently will do, but even adults sometimes too. So sometimes students will put the violin kind of more in front of them and try to put their chin on the chin rest. So really, it's actually more of a jaw rest. Chin rest is kind of a misnomer. So we don't want the violin to be in front of us. We want it to be on our shoulder, and that's kind of why it's important to figure out, like, this is where the bottom plate's going to sit. Another issue is that, likewise, you can see how here it's sitting below my clavicle. That likewise would cause me to tilt my head. So even if we have this part sitting on our clavicle and the button touches our neck, let's see what could still happen is, like, we still don't want to move our head because that's going to cause us to become unaligned. So I'm going to do this correctly one time, which is that I'm just going to hold the violin this way. So like, it's going to sit on my clavicle, button touches my neck, and my head stays still. So that's what we want it to look like. And then after that, so good time to sort of push our shoulder blade back, and now I'm going to bring my elbow forward. So you can see how on the G string, my elbow is significantly in front of the upper bout and the lower bout, actually. And I'm on the E string, it's basically aligned here. So that will make it easiest to reach with your fourth finger on every string.